What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 528 of #AskGSM, here today for Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. Quick birthday shout out, by the way, to John Ritland at Reborn Again on the Twitter machine. Real Honesty with John Ritland on YouTube as well. I mention it almost every week here on the show. Didn't send in a question this week, but I did want to give a quick birthday shout out to him. He's a great dude. Hope he's having a great day. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. Last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So getting right into it here, Micah does it from YouTube. Their first question was, should WWE book the men's elimination chamber with everyone who has been done dirty by Roman Reigns in the bloodline? You take 3 from Raw and 3 from SmackDown. SmackDown, in his words here, would consist of Kevin Owens, LA Knight, and AJ Styles, with Raw consisting of Drew McIntyre, Sami Zayn, and Cody Rhodes. This is how Cody gets in the chamber and wins and gets the rematch against Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. Could this work? That could absolutely work. I've seen other people pitch that. I love the idea. I think Cody should win Elimination Chamber. That's just me. I know Cody winning the Rumble for the second straight year, it would be cool. So here's the thing with Cody winning the Rumble. I would not be upset if Cody wins the Rumble. The same way if Roman Reigns had won twice, or when Cena won it for a second time, and when Batista won it for a second time. It wasn't really necessary in those other instances. With Cody winning, first of all, for the second straight year in a row, it would accomplish history, having been the first person to do it since Stone Cold Steve Austin in, 1998? 26 years ago? That's crazy. Before him, it was Shawn Michaels, and before that, it was Hulk Hogan. So he would join an elite feud, not only having won the Rumble twice, but doing it on back-to-back years. That would be pretty cool. I would not be upset if Cody won, but in my opinion, I feel like there's a better story to tell with not only Punk winning the Rumble on the anniversary of when he walked out of WWE exactly 10 years earlier in his first match back, and he doesn't necessarily have to win. I just think it makes more sense personally. But then you have Cody still in chase mode, trying to figure out how to get to WrestleMania to finish his story and face Roman Reigns. I feel like that to me tells a better story. And I love the idea of doing an Elimination Chamber match, because coming out of the Royal Rumble, you can have Punk say pretty much immediately, I want to face Seth Rollins at WrestleMania for the World Heavyweight Championship. So coming right out of the Royal Rumble, you can then determine, all right, the Elimination Chamber match this year, which last year was for the United States Championship, they could do it for the tag titles. They could do it for the Intercontinental Championship. I would prefer if they used the Chamber, in my opinion. I mean, last year we only had one World Championship, so this wasn't really an issue. But I would prefer if they used the Chamber this coming year to determine Roman's opponent at WrestleMania. And that's where Cody can win, go over, and earn the opportunity that way. And not only have Cody win the Chamber, but involve other people that have also, like you said, been done dirty by Roman Reigns. People like Owens, Knight, Styles. You didn't include Randy Orton, so I don't know where Orton would fit into Elimination Chamber plans. I would probably take out Owens and put in Orton. I know Orton, Knight, and Styles are getting the opportunity at the Royal Rumble. If you're going to keep Kevin Owens in there, I would probably take out LA Knight. Owens is not fucking winning. I think Owens, none of those people are winning aside from Cody Rhodes, I would say. Sami Zayn, McIntyre makes sense because they're from Raw. They would be feuding upon Sami's return. That would make sense. Drew hasn't gotten a rematch with Roman since losing at Clash of the Castle last year. They were involved in War Games, but he lost that too. I'm talking one-on-one. I feel like Drew, Sami, and Cody from Raw make perfect sense. And then I would probably take out Knight, because by that point he would have lost to Roman twice, both at Crown Jewel and then again at Royal Rumble. So I would probably take out Knight and put in Orton if you don't want to take out Owens. But either way, I love the concept of Cody winning the Chamber by beating other people who have unresolved issues with Roman Reigns in the bloodline. So I really do like that idea, and I hope it happens, but I'm not confident it will. His second question, is the 2020 Men's Royal Rumble the greatest Royal Rumble match in WWE history? It's my personal favorite, but what do you think? It's up there. I don't know if the 2020 Men's Rumble would be the best of all time. I think an argument can be made that it is. I will say that. I would still say, and I wasn't a fan for this Rumble. I'm a fan of the Rumble, but I'm not a fan. I wasn't watching wrestling when this Rumble happened. The 1992 Rumble, I still would say, is the greatest of all time, just because of the star power, the circumstances, the way it was booked, the finish, everything. The fact it was the first one for the championship itself. And I have a lot of favorite Rumbles. I answer this question every year. That wasn't your question, but as far as best Rumbles, favorite Rumbles. I love the 2020, the 2021, the 2016 one, the 2018 Rumble as well. I was there for that one. That to me is also among the greatest they've ever done for the Rumbles. The 01 one is fun. Anything prior to that, I wouldn't really put up there as like, aside from 92, as the greatest Rumble ever, at least in my opinion. The 02 one, 03, 04, 05 are all enjoyable. Everything, and the 08 one is also among my greatest of all time, among my favorite as well. Again, I don't know if I would say the 2021 is the greatest of all time, but it did accomplish a lot and did check a lot of boxes in terms of doing stuff that's never been done before and putting Brock Lesnar in there as the champion, but not for the championship. He was in there throwing people around. It had great surprises with MVP showing up, NXT stars and Matt Riddle and Keith Lee. You had Drew McIntyre tossing out Brock for a big pop, making Drew a superstar with that win, and an amazing reaction with that win. An unpredictable outcome. He was in there with Roman Reigns, Orton, Edge, all people who could have conceivably won. So that was another part, and another element that added to it. Drew winning was not predictable at all. So you had all of that. Edge obviously coming out of retirement in that match as well. Other stories being told. So I think the 2020 Rumble does give the 92 one a run for its money. And maybe I'll change my mind in a couple of years from now. I would still say I would probably put the 92 one first and the 2020 Rumble right behind it. But if you were to interchange them, I mean, that's perfect. I mean, it's all subjective, obviously, but that's my own opinion. But the 2021 does come close. His third question, what do you think is the big secret Christian Cage has over Luchasaurus? At this point, honestly, I'm convinced there is no big secret. I know we were all wondering that when Christian Cage first recruited Luchasaurus back in the summer of 2022. Why would he turn on Jungle Boy? Why would he turn heel out of nowhere? We were asking that question for a long time. They haven't even fucking teased that. Unless they haven't been paying attention, I'm pretty sure they haven't even acknowledged the fact that Luchasaurus is only doing what Christian is telling him to because Christian has something over Luchasaurus. And Christian, or rather Luchasaurus, or Killswitch now rather, hasn't been acting up until recently, conflicted that he has to attack Jungle Boy and all these other people, and he's just doing it because Christian Cage told him to. No, Luchasaurus full on went fucking heel 2 years ago, and they never really went back to why. And that was my question 2 years ago, and they never really answered that question. Now, could it be long-term storytelling? Maybe. I'm convinced, like I said, they didn't know then, and they still don't know why now. Why Luchasaurus would turn heel on Jungle Boy, and what this big secret is that Christian has over Luchasaurus. If we do find out, and there is a reason why Christian was able to manipulate Luchasaurus, my opinion, they probably only figured that out recently. That would be some great long-term storytelling if that was the plan from the get-go, and maybe it was. But I wish they had gotten to that sooner, because I feel like I kind of gave up on that a while ago. But as far as what the big secret is, I don't know. Maybe he saw him doing something illegal on that fucking Big Brother show that he was a part of, or The Bachelor, or whatever show that Luchasaurus was a part of before getting into wrestling. Maybe he saw him doing something dirty on that show. He saw him cheating on his wife. I have no fucking clue. I have honestly no idea what they could possibly make the big secret that would be enough for a Luchasaurus to follow Christian for 2 years now. I'm not exactly sure. And I don't really care at this point either. Chris W. from YouTube, their first question was, how do you see the Fatal 4-Way at the Royal Rumble ending? We know Roman is winning the title, or retaining rather, but how do you see the ending being executed? I feel like Roman's going to pin LA Knight to retain the championship. I feel bad for LA Knight, but someone has to take the pinfall loss. I saw the report from a week or two ago, a couple of days ago, that they're doing the Fatal 4-Way because they feel like it's too soon for Orton to get pinned upon his return. So they want to put Orton in an opportunity to challenge for the championship at the show, but not have him win or get pinned. I mean, I fucking hope he's not winning. I like Orton, I like Knight, I like Styles. None of them should be leaving that match as the champion. I know you said, it's obvious that Roman's winning. I think so too, but it is also a slight possibility, as other people have predicted and speculated, maybe they take the belt off of Roman by not even having him get pinned. So he maintains that undefeated streak, and I mean, even though he's already been pinned in that tag team match by Jey Uso last summer, but they can have him lose the championship. That way, setting up Rock and Roman for WrestleMania without the championship. Fuck no. I don't want to see Cody and Orton at WrestleMania for the championship without Cody first beating Roman. That completely defeats the purpose of Cody losing last year to Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. That is completely ridiculous. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I'll keep it short and sweet this week as opposed to ranting on it like I did last week. Cody has to beat Roman Reigns for the championship, and at this point, it has to happen at WrestleMania 40. No more delaying it. Cody's not beating Orton. Cody and Orton is a big match to do. I am looking forward to that match when we get it. I would save that for SummerSlam or another time. You don't rush that in 2 months and have Cody win the championship that way by just giving Orton a quick transitional reign. It just won't mean as much. You're going to turn Orton heel between now and then? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Maybe by SummerSlam, not right now. So, just my opinion. But anyway, I do feel like in that Fatal 4-Way, Roman pins Knight to retain. Poor LA Knight, but I feel like he will rebound at WrestleMania by winning the United States Championship from Logan Paul. His second question, Jack Perry is supposedly done with his suspension, but Tony Khan missed out on a golden opportunity to have him return Thanksgiving Eve in Chi-Town. What do you think his first storyline will be upon his return? You're right. I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking they were holding off Jack Perry to be brought back in Chicago on the Thanksgiving Eve Chicago show back in November. And I thought he would be revealed as the devil on that show. It was the first Dynamite after Full Gear. I was convinced that's what they were doing. Thank fucking God he's not the devil. And I like Jack Perry. I didn't want him to be the devil. That would have been dumb. But I was surprised, even if it wasn't... Maybe they wanted to hold off Jack Perry because he knew people would, like me, would think that he was the devil. They always intended on revealing the devil at World's End. So they figured if they revealed Jack Perry before the devil got revealed, like if they brought back Jack Perry before the devil was revealed, his identity, then people would automatically assume it was Adam Cole or someone else. So that would kind of dwindle down the options for who it could be. But by keeping out Jack Perry, and he wasn't back yet, it increases the odds that he would be the devil. And he wasn't, thankfully. But now that the devil's been revealed, we've only had one Dynamite since the pay-per-view, but he can come back tonight, he can come back next week. I'm not sure how many people are clamoring for the return of Jack Perry, but I thought he was doing good heel work before he got suspended. I don't know what you do now with him. Honestly, I'm not really sure. What storyline he does, I don't know. I don't know who he feuds with. Like him and Sammy Guevara, again, who gives a fuck? I know Sammy's a babyface now. Like, Jericho's a babyface. I don't really care to see Jericho and Jack Perry. I mean, you can go back to that because Jack Perry never actually beat Jericho and vice versa. They had a match on Dynamite back in late 2019. Where if Jack Perry could, I think it was a 10-minute time limit match. And he actually endured the entire 10 minutes. Now, I don't think it was for the championship because he didn't lose and he didn't win either. But he did stand the whole 10 minutes, I believe. And they never went back to the match after that. You would think, oh, they were planting the seeds for a future feud. He went on to fucking feud with like Orange Cassidy instead, Jericho did. But they never went back to it. I don't really care to see it again at this point. It's been so long. Jericho just has go-away heat with me right now from a television standpoint specifically. Not to mention all the other shit that he seemingly has going on with him behind the scenes right now. But yeah, I don't really care to see Jack Perry and Jericho. I'm trying to think of other baby faces on the AEW roster that Jack Perry can work with. No one really comes to mind, but the one thing they should and must do upon his return is pair him with Anna Jay, his real-life girlfriend. I believe they're still together, but she's doing a whole lot of nothing right now. She's on the TV... kind of inconsistently. She's on the TV show inconsistently, Rampage, Collision, whatever, mostly Rampage. But she's still linked with the JAS rejects. Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, Jake Hager. Matt Menard is doing the Angelo Parker thing where he's like flirting with Ruby Soho, whatever. Jake Hager is just a fucking waste of a spot on the show. But Anna Jay should not be involved with that crap at all. I don't care if it's building to Ruby Soho and Anna Jay. Maybe we've already seen it and I just forget that. The matches all kind of blend together for me because they have so many hours of television. WWE, same thing, but at least WWE has brands and I can kind of remember, okay, I saw this match on that show. With AEW, I could see Anna Jay on Collision, Rampage, and Dynamite and all in 1 week, and I wouldn't remember where she faced this person. Anyway, that's besides the point. Put Anna Jay with Jack Perry. I feel like as a heel couple on television, they could work really well together, and it would give her something to do. It would give him something to do. Again, who they work with, I don't know. But it would be better than nothing. So I hope to see that at some point in the not-too-distant future. His next question, just like you, he said, I wasn't too high on New Year's Evil, as I felt it under-delivered on some of the matches, and I completely agree on the main event for the title being a cop-out, being inexcusable. However, I have always liked the Dusty Classic, since NXT is low on great tag teams right now, and especially in tag matches. Who do you see making the finals, and who do you pick as the winners? So my original prediction was Braun Breaker and Baron Corbin going to the finals to face Axiom and Nathan Frazier. But then I found out after I wrote my review, last night for WrestleRant.com. Cheap plug, check it out. That they're actually all on the same side of the bracket. So that's probably the semifinal match. Breakker and Corbin advanced last night with a win over Gallus, and Frazier and Axiom advanced with their win over, who did they face? Hank and Tank. Hank Walker and Tank Ledger. That's what it is. They're a tag team. So that's the semifinal match. I think Breakker and Corbin advanced to the finals from there. The other teams, I think it's Idris and Nofe and Carmelo and Trick. Trick should be facing Ilya at Vengeance Day. That hasn't been confirmed, and I'm not really sure why, but that should be the match for the NXT Championship at Vengeance Day. You could have them go to the finals and lose and then do the turn with Carmelo, and I'm still assuming they're doing the turn with Carmelo and Trick at Vengeance Day. Are the finals taking place at Vengeance Day, or are they doing the NXT Tag Team title match on that show? That I'm not sure about. I guess you could do Trick and Mello versus Corbin and Breakker. I don't think it's going to be a Nofe and Blade. I don't really give a shit about them personally at this point. You have that match, and then the other match was, I don't remember. Let's see if we can look it up right now. I'm not sure what the other one is. Dusty 2023 Classic Bracket. I looked at it last night, and I completely forgot. Okay, here we go. Full 2024 Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic Bracket revealed. If my laptop would load, we would get to it faster. Okay, here we go. Chase U, but it's not Andre Chase. It's Duke Hudson and Riley Osborne. And they're taking on the LWOs, Joaquin Wilde and Cruz del Toro. I think I'm going to go LWO. I don't think they make it to the finals either. I guess it would have to be Carmelo and Trick. I don't really care to see Chase U in the finals or LWO or even Blade and Nofe. Let's go Carmelo and Trick, and they lose. I think Breakker and Corbin, regardless of who makes it to the finals, are winning the whole thing. I don't know if they win the tag team titles necessarily, but I do think they're winning the whole thing. So that's my pick. Next question of his. I am really enjoying Sky Blue and Julia's Our progression is in ring performers and characters. Sky's new aggression look and finisher of the TKO into the Dragon Sleeper looks great, and Julia's amazing entrance has people making the analogy of Stevie Nicks mixed with The Undertaker. I always also love the subtle facial expressions Sky makes every time she's next to Julia, especially when she's holding the title over her head. Where do you see this story going? It's funny you mention Sky's facial expression because other than that, I feel like her facial expressions are a big issue with the current character. I think the heel turn was a nice development of her character, a much needed development, desperate development of her character, but her facial expressions have to improve. She's been a little bit better lately, but I noticed that a couple of weeks ago, she just doesn't look intimidating. She looks fucking bored out there. I just listened to her podcast interview with Jericho actually earlier today, and she came across really well. She seems like a great person, but they need to work on, because she seems like the issue is she's a naturally energetic, bubbly person. She's like naturally a babyface. So they really have to have her commit to the character, and so far so good. It's not going to happen overnight, but she needs to continue to make subtle tweaks to the character and the on-air presentation to really make it work. But so far, so good. Julia, I think, is light years ahead of Sky. And I guess she was also in the same boat at one point, maybe 6 months to a year ago, where her character also was not really overly interesting to me. She wasn't having any interesting matches. She was on Dark doing 2-minute matches like anyone gave a shit. And the character, again, she looked like she was out there bored, out of her mind. But she's really improved the character. She's come a long way. She's improved in the ring as well. So I like the duo of Sky Blue and Julia Hart. As far as where it's going, I don't know. I know Sky Blue said in the podcast, actually, with Jericho earlier today, she wanted to kind of help build the women's tag team division in AEW with Willow, but then she turned heel. So now she's kind of doing it with Julia. I really honestly have no desire to see women's tag team titles in AEW. WWE doesn't do them well. No one really gives a shit about the women's tag titles in Impact, although they did start off strong a few years ago. At this point, I don't really give a fuck about those either. I appreciate the attempt by all these companies to do a women's tag team title. NWA does it as well. I would rather just see, we already have a mid-card women's championship in AEW, that being the TBS title. We don't need tag titles. AEW is just now starting to do more with the women and spotlight them more, give them more television time. We do not need women's tag team titles, first of all. Second of all, if that's not the end game, I don't really know where you go with them. At some point, one will turn on the other. I don't know if that's the idea, to have Sky Blue turn on Julia Hart and she's the one to beat her for the belt. Hopefully that would not be anytime soon. She just turned heel, did Sky Blue. I don't know if you would then turn Julia. I'm not sure. that probably is the end game eventually, but just keeping them aligned gets them on television, gets Sky Blue in a meaningful role on the show aside from just showing up and losing to people, so there is that as well. But I'm liking what I'm seeing from them right now, and I think they work well together, and hopefully it continues from here. Jordan B. from YouTube, they're kind of a very similar question to what I just talked about. Their question was, how would you feel if WWE took a page out of AAA by introducing their own version of the mixed tag team titles? So, I thought this was AEW for a second you were talking about, which would be awful. I mean, interestingly, the AAA mixed tag team titles were at one point defended in AEW by Sammy and Ty Mello a couple of years ago. And again, no one gave a shit. Absolutely not. I appreciate the idea. And you're probably going off the idea, oh, there's enough couples in WWE to make it work. And even if they're not actual couples, I mean, no. I saw Mixed Match Challenge. They had fun with it. That show just sucked. Again, they tried, and like Sami Zayn and Becky Lynch were a fun duo, and AJ and Charlotte and some other teams like that. And they did it for 2 seasons. It just, I don't know. Just the show, it's just not really, to even have women's tag team titles that they're desperately trying to make relevant right now is an uphill climb to make those relevant and to make people care about that division and those championships. To then introduce mixed tag team titles, or even if you were to get rid of the women's tag team titles and introduce mixed tag team titles, the options are they're even more limited than women's tag team titles because you don't have a lot of mixed duos, I guess. I mean, I guess you have Zelina Vega and previously Santos. It could be Rey and Zelina, Santos and Elektra Lopez maybe. I don't know. I feel like the women are kind of in their own, I don't want to say bubble because they do interact with the men. We don't really see mixed tag team matches often in WWE because it's not really necessary. I mean, Valhalla doesn't really need to be in the ring all that more than she is. And she's actually a wrestler, unlike Scarlett, who really isn't much of a worker. And she's not awful in her own right, but I don't need to see Scarlett in their wrestling matches consistently or competing for championships. Same with B-Fab and even Valhalla. I think she works better as a manager at this point than she ever did as an in-ring performer for WWE, at least in my opinion. She adds to the Viking Raiders, Ivar's act on his own, blah, blah, blah. So the answer is no. I appreciate the attempt to kind of do something different, but I feel like that'd be a fucking disaster. Bill Meister, 88, their question was, he said, first of all, Happy New Year, Graham. Hope you had a great Christmas. Apologies for missing the last 2 shows, but a future WWE Universal Champion was born on Christmas Day, so he has kept me busy. He's doing well and was more excited than me to see The Rock return. So he had a question as well, but first of all, congrats to Bill for that awesome news. That is very, very cool. I know you mentioned a while ago you were in the process of, like you were actually giving birth. No, you mentioned a while ago that you had a son or a child on the way. So that is really cool. You didn't say their name, though. Feel free to share the name. That'd be cool. But born on Christmas Day is pretty sick. Hopefully in the future, though, the kid kind of picks up on the idea, listen, my birthday's on Christmas. That should not mean I get any less gifts than anyone else. He should get more gifts, combining the birthday with the Christmas holiday. To me, it just makes sense. But anyway, you might not want to deal with it anytime in the foreseeable future. You said 3-part question for me after missing the last few shows. What are my thoughts on Deonna Purrazzo signing with AEW? Was it the right choice? And if AEW gets Mercedes Moné, is their women's division the best on paper? Key words there, on paper, because I feel like the execution of the women's division is still inferior to WWE's, even though WWE's could also use a lot of work as well. For your 3-part question, the first part of it, with Deonna Purrazzo, very excited that she's with AEW. I would have liked to have seen her back in WWE as well. But honestly, between the two, and I think we already talked about Purrazzo here on the show a while ago. I think Christopher asked me about Deonna a while ago. I think I said AEW just because, 1, she hasn't been there before. 2, I know she was with WWE previously. They just didn't use her properly, and I'm not sure where she even really fits in right now. She would probably have to go to NXT first, which is fine. But she's way more experienced than anyone else they have there. She's older than them. She doesn't really need to be there. Jade Cargill's a different story because Jade Cargill is older than them. I mean, not that much older. Same thing with Deonna. She's not like fucking 40 or anything, but Jade is inexperienced. She could use the experience in NXT. Deonna's not as big of a star as Jade, but she is far more experienced than anyone else in that NXT women's division. She does not need to be there. She would probably have to go right to the main roster. And looking right now at the landscape for both shows, I don't really know where she fits in. So her going to AEW makes sense. I just want them to use her properly. I've said that before, but and when I say that, because someone asked me about that on Twitter last week, when I say use her properly, what I mean is do not bring her in, give her a couple wins, give her a title shot and lose, and then promptly have her disappear from the shows, and then relegate her to Rampage or worse, Ring of Honor TV. And they were, Ring of Honor, to their credit, is a lot of talented women, but people like Taya Valkyrie, I think she's a great asset to that division. We'd never even really see her on AEW anymore. She was brought in, got a bunch of title shots out of the gate, lost every single fucking one, and then disappeared from the program completely, and they just banished her to Ring of Honor, which I feel like she's better than at this point. So, hopefully that doesn't happen to Deonna, but I do think she's a great addition to that roster. Was it the right choice for her to go there? I already answered that one. I think so. I think in WWE, at this current point in time, she would be lost in the shuffle. It depends how long of a deal she signed with AEW. She could be there for 3 years and then go to WWE after that. She's only like 30, 31 years old. Maybe not even. She might now actually be like fucking 28 or something. So when I said earlier she'd be older than the other women there, that's not even necessarily true. She's probably around the same age as some of those women. But like I said, she's just far more experienced. But I think it was the right choice. And the third part of your question, if AEW does get Mercedes, is their women's roster the best on paper? I think an argument can be made for that. I would still give the edge to WWE, just because I feel like they have bigger stars in their division than AEW. But AEW has a lot of talented women. I mean, Mercedes is a star, obviously, but I'm talking as far as the presentation of these women. You're saying the best on paper. But, like, for example, like, we're going off of right now, the answer to me would still be WWE. They just brought in Camille. In NXT alone, they have Roxanne, Tiffany Stratton, Cora Jade, Blair Davenport, among others. And AEW, I feel like WWE, with the brand split and 3 distinct different shows, you have more opportunities to create more stars. Because it's not like in AEW where Sky Blue's on every fucking show. Same thing with Julia Hart and Chris Statlander, people like that. But in AEW, you do have Chris Statlander, Willow Nightingale, Toni Storm, Saraya, who isn't the same performer she was 10 years ago, but she's still an asset to that division, I think. Sky Blue, I think I mentioned, I'm not sure. But they have a lot of great women. Toni Storm's doing great work right now. Among other people, Britt Baker, Hikaru Shida, Riho when she's around. They have a lot of great women. And Ring of Honor as well. If I include NXT with WWE, you have to include Ring of Honor as well. Billy Starks is very good for only being 18, 19 years old. You have Taya Valkyrie in there now. Legit Layla Hirsch is really good. Rachel Ellering they just brought in. She's pretty good. Athena's obviously amazing. They should be having her on AEW television, but I digress. In WWE, you have a lot of just much bigger stars, in my opinion. I know AEW would have Mercedes, and they have Deonna, who's not really the biggest star, compared to like Charlotte, or Becky, or Bayley, or even Bianca, and especially Rhea Ripley, if you heard that fucking reaction on Monday night. Nia Jax is not great at all, and I don't think she's far from the best in that WWE women's division, but at this point, she gets more heat than a majority of their women's performers on their shows. So that's just a fact. I would still give the edge to WWE, even if AEW were to bring in Mercedes, but it does make it a bit more arguable and debatable, and even than it was previously. If you had told me that 6 months ago, I would laugh in your face that AEW was a better women's division than WWE. But now that they've brought in Deonna, they have Thunder Rosa back, Jamie Hayter might be on her way back soon, and they might be bringing in Mercedes most likely. That definitely makes it more even, and you can make that argument, and you wouldn't necessarily be wrong, I think. Next question from Noel from Facebook. Their first question was, do you see Cody Rhodes, Drew McIntyre, and CM Punk being the final 3 in the Royal Rumble given the promo on Raw? I do, because they're probably the 3 likeliest. Not even Drew. I have no inclination to believe that Drew McIntyre is winning, especially if he hasn't signed a new contract yet. I mean, why would he win? He's already lost to Roman a few times. He's already lost to Rollins a bunch, too. He's not winning the Royal Rumble. So it really just comes down to Cody and Punk, and Drew has issues with Punk. And I guess not really with Cody yet, but they could plant the seeds for that in the Rumble. So the only issue with that, and Gunther I could see being in the Rumble and maybe coming close to winning as well. The only issue with them being the final 3, or if you add in Gunther and he's, among the final 4, is that they're all Raw superstars. No one from SmackDown. I mean, the issue with that, though, is that the 3 biggest babyfaces from SmackDown that could win the Rumble are all competing for the championship earlier in the show against Roman Reigns. And I guess that could be the main event. I'm not sure. Hopefully the men's Rumble does close the show this year. The angle with Sami Zayn was worthy of closing the show last year. I don't think we're getting an angle like that to close out the Rumble this year. Unless The Rock shows up, and even then, we already got him on Raw a couple of weeks ago. Do that earlier in the show. Have the men's Rumble close the Royal Rumble this year, in my opinion. But anyway, Cody, Drew, Punk are all Raw superstars. But then again, I'm not really sure who from SmackDown would be among the final 3 or final 4 as well. Sheamus, maybe? I mean, possibly if he's back between now and then, or if he returns in the match itself. I mean, I guess Orton, AJ, or Knight could reappear in the Rumble, but if they're not winning, then what's the fucking point? I guess they could lose and then come right back out. I don't really need to see that necessarily. That to me is kind of a waste of a spot, but they've done that before. They're not in it. I'm not even really sure who else from the SmackDown side would be in it. Even Kevin Owens, he's competing for the United States Championship on that show, and he's not winning the Rumble anyway. So I guess fuck SmackDown this year again, because it came down to Cody and Gunther last year. The year before that, who did it come down to? Brock? Who did Brock toss out to win? Was it I don't remember. Not Roman. I honestly don't remember, but Brock was a free agent, so I guess it didn't really matter. In 2021, it was Edge and Randy, who were both Raw superstars at the time. In 2020, it was Drew and Roman. And at least, okay, Roman was a SmackDown guy at that point, but still, SmackDown has not won the Rumble in a very long time. Edge did go on to use his title shot in 2021 for a SmackDown title, but at the time that he won it, he was a Raw superstar. So, it kind of goes, it doesn't even really go both ways, because SmackDown has not won the Rumble in fucking years. They probably should. This year will be no different, though. It will be either Cody or Punk, and I think Punk's winning it, and he's a Raw guy. And he should not choose Roman Reigns. Their next question, very random, but their question was, now that we're all adults, can we agree that MJ was the real villain in Spider-Man 2, playing with Peter and John's feelings throughout the movie? Again, very fucking random. But you're right, though. MJ in those movies, specifically 2, comes across as such, like, she's not, I don't want to say like a slut or anything like that, but like, she gets it, like, doesn't she even end up with James Franco at one point? I watched the movies back a few years ago. I don't really remember, but she was with Peter Parker at one point. He was crushing on her. I don't know if they got together by the end of 1. They were together by the end of 2, I believe, but not 3. Maybe I'm reversing that. I don't remember, but he's with her at one point. James Franco's character's with her, and James Franco and Peter are friends. And then there's that guy, John. So when you said that, I'm thinking, who the fuck is John? I don't remember John. And then I'm thinking, are you talking about Spider-Man 2, the Amazing Spider-Man movie? Or what are we talking about here? And then I forgot there was another guy named John that she married because he was like the safe choice. I'm like, oh my God, how many times did MJ get around? This fucking woman's a hussy. But yeah, MJ's not the real villain necessarily, but her dating choices are questionable. She's all over the place. If you rewatch the movie now, it's like, what is she doing? I guess she had reasons for being with this guy and then the other one. But, she's getting around from Peter to his friend to this other random guy. Like, man, MJ, slow it down a little bit. Christopher L. from Facebook, their first question was, over the last year, I feel Shawn Michaels has really cooled off Roxanne Perez / Roxy. After her match against Meiko Satomura, where she passed out and she was stripped of the title, they didn't really give her any meaningful storylines after her return, and this included the short rivalry with Blair Davenport that didn't really help her cause. I do think, however, this rivalry with Kiana James did more damage to her, as the feud literally started with her and Kiana getting in a catty argument, and while they had a great physical war at Halloween Havoc, the feud continued for some reason, and she loses to Kiana in a flat cage match at Deadline. Ever since that, she's been booked as someone who can't keep her emotions in check, which are characters that are hard to book and even harder to connect with the audience. What do you think is the end game here for Roxy? And do you think this will get her over? And do you think it could help her get ready for the main roster? I think they've kept her busy enough, is my opinion. They haven't put her back in the championship picture. There really hasn't been an opportunity to do so. She did get a rematch for the championship, and she wasn't stripped of the title. I think that was the original idea, but then she did end up defending the championship at Stand and Deliver, I think. I don't think she actually technically was stripped of it. I think she did defend it at Stand and Deliver. She lost it in the ladder match. She got a rematch against, not Tiffany, but Indy. I think it was Indy and Tiffany in the triple threat, and Indy pinned Roxanne. I honestly thought Roxanne was headed to the main roster at that point, more so than Indy. Indy got drafted as she should have, but Roxanne stayed put in NXT. And then she lost in the NXT Women's Championship Tournament, did Roxanne. But you're right, though. I mean, I would say she hasn't been completely directionless. Braun Breaker has been completely fucking directionless. At least with Roxanne, she feuded with Blair Davenport. They had a couple good matches. They had a very good hardcore match, I thought, by NXT standards, at the Great American Bash Show. The Kiana James thing didn't really do much for me. I don't really care about Kiana James personally. I think she's improved. But there are other women, in my opinion, in that division that have a higher ceiling than Kiana James. So her putting over Kiana at Deadline didn't really do anything for me. Kiana's had no follow-up. That served no purpose. No one in the building cared about the outcome or the fucking match itself. No one gave a shit. It clearly is headed to her turning heel. That's got to be the end game here. And honestly, I think she could play that character fairly well. from what we've seen of her doing so far with this frustrated character, as what we saw last week with her getting disqualified against Ariana Grace. She won the match, but then after the match, she continued to attack Ariana, so the referee reversed the decision, blah, blah, blah. I thought she came across well. We were not we, like me and you specifically, but a lot of people were probably thinking the same thing with AJ Lee 13, 14, 15 years ago, when she was playing a very similar character to Roxanne when she first came into WWE, and then she did like the crazy heel gimmick. Not every woman needs to be crazy. Oh, they're turning heel, they're crazy. Like, that's such a fucking stereotype. But AJ Lee played that character exceptionally well back in the day. I think Roxanne can too. I think she has it in her. I haven't seen her play a heel in any of the promotions I've seen her in, whether that be Impact, Ring of Honor, MLW, now WWE. But I think it is something worth experimenting with, and over WrestleMania weekend at Stand and Deliver. I think you can do Lyra and Roxanne, which I don't know if we've ever gotten one-on-one before, for the championship, and Lyra retains. I mean, I guess Lyra at that same show, I mean, at the same time, I mean, I've said this before, I think I said this last week, Cora and Lyra are next up for an opportunity. And there's Lola Vice too, but I don't need to see Lola Vice as champion anytime soon. But you could do Roxanne and Lyra over WrestleMania weekend. I think all roads lead to Cora Jade becoming champion. So it's all a matter of who wins that Battle Royal next week and that Fatal 4-Way that comes out of it. Who becomes the contender at Vengeance Day? I think it can be Roxanne. Maybe Roxanne goes into that match as a babyface but loses and turns heel. I'm not sure. I don't know what she does over WrestleMania weekend if she's a part of Stand and Deliver at all. But I think at some point we need to get Lyra and Roxanne for the championship. Lyra wins. Lyra retains. And then Roxanne gets called up. That's another thing too. Like we complain about, oh, Braun Breaker's directionless. Roxanne's not got a lot going on. I think part of it is because even with Triple H in charge, it doesn't seem like Shawn Michaels has a lot of say. Not say, but doesn't have a lot of heads up on, hey, we're calling up this person soon. So kind of phase them out and we'll bring them up shortly, blah, blah, blah. Even though Triple H was in that exact same position 10 years ago when he was running NXT, you would think that they would give him more of a heads up as far as when people are getting called up and whatever. But sometimes you just never really know. Injuries happen. Plans change. That's probably why Breaker really hasn't done much, because they don't want to put him in a major storyline. And then Triple H says, hey, pal, we need Braun on Monday's Raw, and then you lose your storyline. So with Carmelo and Trick, I don't know what the case is there. I think Carmelo is ready for the main roster, and he has been for a long time. But the difference there, though, might be that Triple H might have said, listen, we'll call up Carmelo. We don't really have a plan in place for him right now. We'll bring him up after WrestleMania. Braun Breaker, same thing, but at least Carmelo's been busy doing stuff. Braun's just done absolutely fucking nothing since after WrestleMania last year. I don't know. But back to your original question with Roxanne, it might be a similar situation where he knows that before the draft this past year, there were rumors of Roxanne getting called up. And I said at the time, I think it's too early. Not that she wouldn't do well on the main roster, but I thought she needed to do a better job. Interestingly, actually, I made the comment of improving her character and improving her mic skills. And I think she's done that, actually. I think she's come a long way on the mic and as a character since I last said that about a year ago. If she were to get called up, she was already in the Rumble last year, but if she were to get called up in the Rumble or at WrestleMania, after WrestleMania in the draft, whatever, I feel like now she would be ready. But that might be another reason, too, because Triple H might feel like, or Shawn Michaels, rather, hey, if I have this girl that's ready for the main roster, and they can call her up at any time, I don't want her as champion or competing for the championship if I have to just lose them out of nowhere. So he's got to be careful. But I do think turning heel is the ultimate endgame for Roxanne, and I'm looking forward to that eventual match between her and Lyra if we do get it. His next question, JD from NY once said in a video that an entrance helps the entity/aura of a character. Music and presentation is the key to a wrestler. Guys like Steve Austin, The Undertaker, Goldust, Roman Reigns, Cody, and many others in WWE know this and are presented as major stars. One thing I have noticed is that Tony Khan, love him or loathe him, always finds the correct way about making a wrestler's presence feel special. Many examples include Kenny Omega, Christian Cage's entrance with the Children's Choir, Full Gear, Sting and Darby's at All In, MJF sitting on the throne, Julia Hart's fantastic entrance, and even Moxley's subtle tribute to the Shield of going through the crowd. Now, when you consider the entrances at Survivor Series in November, nobody felt any bigger than they usually felt on the weekly shows. It seems to me Tony Khan gets the idea of doing the entrance more than Triple H does most of the time. What do you think? And am I missing some other great entrances from both or other companies? No, you're right. I think Tony Khan does a great job, and I think, listen, we're all marks, but the way that he comes across too marky at certain points for a fucking promoter can be a hindrance, like what we saw yesterday with the Twitter meltdown involving Tony Khan, but it also has its benefits too, because the guy knows what fans want to see and what makes a wrestler special. So he will pay the rights to certain songs and bring people out to certain music. You didn't even mention Bryan Danielson coming out to Final Countdown back at, what 2 pay-per-views did he come out to that music for? Was it Forbidden Door? And the Wrestle Dream might have been the other one. It was at least 2 different shows. I don't think it was All In because he wasn't on that show. It might have been All Out, actually. I think it was All Out and Forbidden Door. Didn't come out to it at like Wrestle Kingdom or whatever. But still, I mean, even that adds to the presentation of a competitor. WWE's talent, for the most part, it's probably just the bigger crowds and how hot the product is right now, feel like bigger deals. But you are right, though. I feel like, and it's not something I've really focused on or talked about, but Tony Khan does do a great job of giving certain people a great entrance. Roman Reigns feels like a larger-than-life deal. Jey Uso with his, just vibe and charisma and stuff feels like a bigger deal than most of the AEW roster. But, like, you're comparing All In to Survivor Series. And I don't really think that's fair because WWE does pay-per-views almost every single month. They don't do special pay-per-view entrances for everybody. They typically save that stuff for WrestleMania. When they do their WrestleMania entrances, they come across as better than anything I've seen in AEW. Because AEW typically doesn't have that sort of, budget or whatever. I mean, maybe it All In on their biggest show ever. But WrestleMania's entrances beat out anything in any other company, in my personal opinion. But at the same time, AEW does them more spread out because they don't have as many pay-per-views. So when they do them at All Out or All In or Forbidden Door or whatever, I guess they've had more pay-per-views recently. But that doesn't really seem to be the case going forward. Even Jericho's choir back at Revolution 2020 was sick. But again, they don't do that sort of stuff often. They try to make every pay-per-view feel special, which has its benefits and has its cons as well. But I think, and no pun intended. But I do feel like he does deserve credit, as you mentioned, of doing a great job of enhancing the presentation of these performers with the entrance, because that does make a very big difference. It absolutely does. I know a lot of people, even Alexis is a wrestling fan, obviously, but she likes the music and the entrances, the pomp and circumstance surrounding the performance itself, even more so than the fucking matches. I think a lot of people that watch wrestling casually do not give a fuck about the matches themselves. They care more about the story and the characters and the entrances that come along with it, because it's unlike anything else in any other medium, in my personal opinion. So you're right, Tony Khan does do a great job of it, but WWE also does a good job of it when they need to. Maybe not necessarily at Survivor Series, and the stage for that show looked cool. It wasn't really over the top at all, but they did that to allow for more seats in the building. But when it comes to kind of like big stage entrances, in my opinion, no one does it better than WWE at WrestleMania, and that's really when it matters most. His next question, what are your thoughts on the whole situation with Andrew Zarian and his family getting death threats over reports of Mercedes Moné going to AEW? I think it's beyond sickening and shows how vile professional wrestling fans can be. What about you? Yeah, it goes without saying, but a lot of wrestling fans can be fucking disgusting, stupid, dumb, doing family death threats, stuff like that, to media people and the wrestlers themselves. We've heard horror stories about that stuff for years. It's not surprising. It doesn't make it any less, maybe not disappointing, because I really expect nothing less than that from certain wrestling fans, unfortunately. I hate to say it. But it doesn't make it any less sickening, as he mentioned. So, yeah, it's an unfortunate situation. He said he got his first death threat from the Mercedes. And it wasn't even anything like, like Meltzer, I'm sure, gets death threats for, like, his star ratings and dumb shit like that. Andrew, to my knowledge, the only thing he had done was just report that Mercedes is probably going to AEW. So the death threat probably came from some diehard Sasha fan that really wants her to go back to WWE. People are just fucking stupid. Not to generalize, not every wrestling fan is like that, but the ones that typically talk the loudest are the most disgusting, unfortunately. And it gives everyone a bad look, unfortunately. His last question here, how would you sum up the legacy of Vince Russo? I think that while he had massive success in WWE, which led to the birth of the highly successful, albeit overrated Attitude Era, he only got so far because Vince allowed him to get so far. When he left WWE and he went to WCW, he was exposed as a one-trick pony and a complete hack. Then his legacy became an even bigger joke with his TNA work. Now he does a podcast where, just like his old rival Eric Bischoff, he bashes AEW and Tony Khan, despite the fact TK has a better track record of success and profit than Russo ever did. What do you think Russo's legacy is? His legacy, there's a lot you could say about Vince Russo. I'm not a Vince Russo fan. I feel like a lot of the times, including in like Dark Side of the Ring and certain stuff I've seen of his podcast, he says certain shit just to get people talking. He knows that's how it works with the engagement bullshit nowadays. He's probably always been like that, but he just amplifies it now because he knows people will talk about him, whatever. I have nothing against him personally. You know what's interesting? Before I talk about his legacy, I'll mention this. We actually did a podcast with Vince Russo a couple of weeks ago, back in like November, myself and Randy Cruz. It wasn't my idea. It was Randy's idea. It was the 25th anniversary of the Survivor Series 98 pay-per-view, which Vince Russo booked, the Deadly Games tournament. Probably one of the best things he's ever done creatively was that pay-per-view in the Deadly Games tournament, the outcome, whatever. So we basically did an interview podcast with him about that, not talking about his entire body of work and calling him out on certain shit, but really just talking about that pay-per-view and how it compares to today. And honestly, I thought he made a lot of good points. I don't agree with Vince on a lot, but I feel like he can be, and I don't know the guy personally at all. This was the only time I've ever talked and communicated with Vince Russo. I don't go out of my way to shit on him, like tweet him and stuff. I don't really give a fuck about doing that sort of stuff. I've probably commented on certain shit that he said on Twitter and on Dark Side of the Ring and stuff like that because he comes across like a complete moron sometimes. But he made a lot of good points when we were talking to him about the current state of wrestling and how it compares to then and what they can do better and stuff like that. Unnecessarily shitting on certain companies like AEW or WWE without fully watching the product when you're kind of stuck in an old state of mind of, we got to have matches that are 3 minutes and have women all over the show showing nothing but cleavage and stuff like that. Not that he said that specifically, but I could see that being the mindset of someone like him who came up in that era of that being what it was and that people don't care about women's wrestling, bro, and stuff like that. I feel like even Cornette, who I also agree with on a lot of different points, and Cornette and Russo fucking hate each other, obviously. But one thing I do think they have in common, again, from what I can gather without knowing them personally, is that they put on a shtick. They may not like what WWE or AEW does, but they take the extra mile, and a lot of content creators do this. They take the extra mile and completely fucking burying the company. Oh, this shit is terrible. It may not be good, but they go the extra mile. And when I say something's terrible, I mean it's terrible. But I don't really say AEW's fucking terrible because they do this one thing that I don't like or I don't think works. But they make it their entire personality and identity to completely shit on these companies, specifically AEW. WWE as well. Eric Bischoff, I know, does the same thing from time to time. Another guy I've interviewed, I had a pleasant interaction with him. He was a cool guy, but he also has a lot of questionable opinions, and he says a lot of questionable shit. Vince Russo is no different. As far as what his legacy is, I just think he made his bed, now he has to lie in it. For all the shit that he has done creatively, it's not like he came back, and I could be wrong, but it's not like he came back out in the past 20 years and said, listen, this shit that we booked was pretty bad, and I kind of resent it. But it sounds like he just kind of shifts blame to other people. He never really takes accountability for the bad shit that he's booked and only taking praise for the good stuff. He does deserve a lot of credit for the success of the Attitude Era, not entirely, but, being the creative writer at that time, and it worked for a certain period of time, and his mindset, it does work in a lot of facets of the business. But it doesn't always apply today. And you can't also ignore all the bad shit that he's booked as well for all these different companies. WCW, TNA especially, for as long as he was there. The TNA initials, I think, were attributed to him, which is just fucking terrible, which is why I don't want to see the TNA initials back. Oh, it's nostalgia, cool, but it also means tits and ass, too. Oh, I'm watching tits and ass today on fucking Spike TV. It's stupid. And if he was the one behind it, as I believe he was, that's pretty fucking dumb. If that's one of his biggest contributions to the wrestling business is coming up with the initials for this company. These awful initials. But anyway, I think part of his legacy should be acknowledged as being responsible, partially responsible, creatively for the success during the Attitude Era. Not entirely, not more so than Steve Austin, or probably even more so than Vince McMahon himself. But at the same time, if you talk about that sort of stuff, you need to talk about the bad. If you talk about the bad, you need to talk about the other sort of stuff. What outweighs the other? I feel like Vince Russo is such a stigma about him. I don't think he's a bad person necessarily. Maybe he is. I have no fucking clue. I don't really pay attention to his politics and what he says about other certain stuff. I don't really know. But I feel like when you hear the name Vince, like that to me is what your legacy is. What do you think of when you think of this person? I associate Vince Russo's name with a lot of trash from those WCW days, even WWE as well. I'm not a big Attitude Era guy. There's a lot of stuff that was going on in the Attitude Era that was very successful, but there was also a lot of garbage as well that people do not want to acknowledge that he was also responsible for. A lot of the stuff that TNA did as well, putting the fucking belt on himself in WCW. I mean, that's what I think of. So that to me is his legacy. even more so than the good stuff that he did during the Attitude Era, which you have to acknowledge and remember and acknowledge and, whatever, and recall and give him credit for. But I feel like that's drowned out and overshadowed by a lot of the dumb booking, decisions that he's made since then. I think Eric Bischoff, to a lesser degree, because when I think of Eric Bischoff, I think of more of the success that he had in WCW than a lot of the shit, or that he hasn't done in the past 20 years, and kind of, not ruining TNA, but like he played a part in the downfall of TNA from 2010 to 2013. The WWE stint recently wasn't really, blink and you missed it, but he was also brought in for that, fired fairly quickly. Hasn't had any real success in the wrestling business, booking anything since WCW. I know he was involved in WWE, which he had a great stint there as well, as an on-air character, not really doing stuff behind the scenes. I kind of think about more of the WCW stuff, but at the same time, he hasn't had success on a grand scale in wrestling in over 20, 25 years. Same thing with Vince Russo. He was involved with TNA and kind of getting them off the ground, but there was a lot of bad ideas attributed to him as well. So you got to think about that sort of stuff. That to me is Vince Russo's legacy, but it might differ depending on who you talk to. At Iwagu91, their first question was, your thoughts on Bryan Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr.'s rematch happening at a Northeast Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling show next month. That's cool. I saw the announcement when it was announced a couple days ago, like fucking 1 o'clock in the morning, because Japan time works differently, obviously. But they announced it like early in the morning a couple days ago, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I enjoyed their first match at Wrestle Dream, and it gives Danielson another opportunity to go over to Japan. I thought it was a one and done with him at Wrestle Kingdom in the Dome, and he lost that match, so I thought that was it. It was a one and done. He comes in, loses to Okada, and he's done with New Japan. But no, he's working Zack Sabre Jr. I assume that's where he loses and, allows Zack to get his win back on that show. That's going to be a big win for him. Maybe Danielson goes 2-0, I don't know, but I would just think they booked him against him again because they want to have Zack win on his home turf in Japan after losing in the States a couple months ago. His second question, speaking of Danielson, do you think that Danielson should be Will Ospreay's first opponent as an AEW signed wrestler? I do. That sounds like an all-in match, if not the main event itself. I feel like All In is where Ospreay is going to challenge and or win the AEW World Championship. And I don't know, Danielson should be the world champion on that. He deserves at least one run as AEW World Champion. I don't know if that's in the cards. But if Danielson is not facing Ospreay on that show, then yeah, you do it at Revolution. I guess you could do it on a different pay-per-view or Double or Nothing, but I feel like that'd be an amazing way to kind of introduce Ospreay. He's already been in AEW a bunch, but really bring him on in as a full-time performer by facing and beating Bryan Danielson. That's what I would do. Not to mention it All In, I think we're probably getting Danielson and Nigel McGuinness, hopefully. They teased it a lot. I know Nigel really wanted that match. They were probably going to do it last year if Bryan wasn't hurt. And Danielson came back like fucking 5 days later, just to the luck of Nigel McGuinness, of course. But, yeah, I think because of that, if you're not doing Danielson and Nigel, or Danielson and Ospreay at All In, then you do it at Revolution for Ospreay's first AEW full-time opponent. That's my opinion. His next question, Matt Riddle claimed that he was supposed to win the 2022 Men's Royal Rumble match and the 2022 Men's Money in the Bank match. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I saw that. You know what's funny about this? I've never talked about this before. I interviewed Matt Riddle at a house show a couple of years ago, about a year and a half ago. And the interview's here on the channel. It was an in-person interview. It's on camera. It was at a fucking house show in Mass. We were talking about live events and stuff like that. And I told him, because it's funny, I'm actually part of the reason why he had heat for a certain period of time in the company. And it wasn't because of that interview. I interviewed Riddle about a year before that, right after SummerSlam in 2021. And that was where he made the comments about Roman Reigns. He made those comments to me. And about like, oh, I could beat him in a shoot fight any day. Like really dumb stuff. Like maybe he's right. But like you don't say that in a public interview. And I wasn't even trying to get it out of him. The funny thing is that someone from WWE's PR team, and they never give me any like, oh, say this or talk about that, talk about this, to kind of talk some inside baseball here. They never say, hey, don't mention this or talk about this, whatever. Sometimes there's a certain show we're promoting. But the thing that we were promoting in that first interview was the success of SummerSlam in 2021. And I think the PR guy, maybe it was all intentional. I don't know. He's not there anymore. But the guy mentioned to me ahead of time, maybe ask about Roman and his needle mover comment. Maybe because he knew Riddle would say something dumb and it would make headlines and go viral or whatever. I don't know. But he did. So I asked him about the Roman Reigns needle mover comment, taking all the kind of taking credit for the success of SummerSlam that year. And Riddle just went off saying, oh, I could beat him up in a shoot fight, blah, 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 come face me. And apparently got him heat, which was funny. So then about a year later, going back to the house show interview, I told him that in person. He laughed. And he talked about Roman and kind of Brock on camera in the interview. But it wasn't until the interview was over and the camera was... he doesn't work there anymore, so at this point it doesn't matter. But then he was talking to me about how... and Alexis was there as well, so you can ask her and she would tell you the same thing. And it was right in front of the PR guy. There was another PR guy with us when we were doing the second interview with Riddle in person. And he was talking about the shit right in front of him as well. Not about the Rumble. He didn't say that he was supposed to win the Rumble, because I didn't ask him that. Because I didn't even, follow up on it. Because he talked about the Roman stuff, and maybe, I think Brock too, during the interview. But then as soon as we were done recording, he just comes over and he's like, I don't know the exact wording of what he said, but he basically just said he just fucking hates working with Brock because the guy just bullies him around. He didn't mention the Rumble, which is what he was referring to in that interview that you're talking about, but he talked to me about the Elimination Chamber match where when Brock broke through the chamber, that was not the plan. Brock did that on his own and fucking started hitting his finisher on everyone. That was all Brock. So honestly, when he told me that, and I don't think he would lie about that sort of things, that Elimination Chamber thing was wild. I always think the plan was to have Brock win the Rumble. When I heard him say Brock wasn't supposed to win the Rumble, it was supposed to be Riddle, that doesn't even make sense. Because there was one championship at that time. They were fucking not doing Matt Riddle and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. Matt Riddle was never going to win the Royal Rumble. Maybe Randy Orton, but they were like the tag team champions at that point. Riddle was never going to win the Rumble, so I don't even really know what he's talking about. I mean, he was the one involved. I more so believe what he told me about Elimination Chamber. Maybe he mixed it up. I don't know. But because other people had said in the past, oh, Matt Riddle was supposed to win. He was never going to fucking win the Rumble. I don't think. It doesn't even make sense. Think about it. They were doing Roman and Brock for months. The end game was always WrestleMania. Why would Matt Riddle, when there was one world championship, win the fucking Royal Rumble to do Roman and Riddle at WrestleMania? Are you kidding me? That would have been a better match than Roman and Brock, but that was never going to happen. That doesn't even make sense. I mean, actually, at that point, there were two titles, but Riddle was not going to go on to WrestleMania to face... who would he have faced? Brock was the champion, but Brock lost the belt to Bobby. They were not going to do Bobby and Riddle. That doesn't even make sense. They were always going to do what they did, which was stupid, by having Brock win the Rumble and all this other shit. I have no doubt that Brock takes liberties with his opponents and bullying people around the way that he did. The way that he talked to me about the Elimination Chamber match, when he said Brock broke in on purpose and started putting people away and the match ran short because of it, he was probably always supposed to win. I have no doubt about that. But the way that he went about it, when he just started hitting his finisher on everyone and burying everyone in the match, I'm sure that was not intentional. I'm sure that was an accident, and Brock just went into business for himself. That's inexcusable. But I don't think Riddle was ever supposed to win that. I don't think he was supposed to win Money in the Bank either, before Theory won it. I mean, maybe it was an idea that was batted around for maybe 10 seconds. But again, think of the timeline. Before Money in the Bank, Riddle already lost to Roman Reigns in a last chance match. So I know he could have gotten around that by winning the briefcase, but he was never going to beat Roman Reigns. Again, there was one world title. What purpose would that have even served? He would have won the briefcase. Okay, that would have worked his way around the last chance stipulation of facing Roman again for the championship, but then he would have cashed in and lost again, so what's even the fucking point? Unless they separated the championships, which at that point they had no intention and no plans of doing. I don't know. Maybe he heard from someone in creative right before the show and they batted that idea around of him winning the briefcase for 10 seconds. But I don't think it was something that was ever seriously considered. If anyone was going to win the briefcase that year, Rollins made sense and Sami Zayn made sense. Matt Riddle did not make any sense. At noob_n_co TV, their first question was, with all the commotion, almost a competition, with all the commotion regarding Mercedes Moné and which wrestling promotion she'll sign with, will she sign to WWE or AEW? I got a feeling that she might just get signed to AEW. They might give her the star treatment in their women's division. I think so too. I mean, I've said before, I don't think it's the best fit just because of how they've presented their women. They've improved on that in the last year. I still think WWE is the better fit, and there's a logical story to tell with her going back to WWE as part of the Bayley storyline. Andrew Zarian was that who we talked about him earlier. He was the one among others that kind of reported that Mercedes was AEW bound. Nothing is set in stone, but it looks incredibly likely. It could very well happen tonight, actually. They may not have wanted to do it last week. They wanted to do that do the Deonna Purrazzo debut on that show, save the Mercedes one for a different time. That makes sense. They might want to build it up. I think that was his other point that he made, Andrew said, that they might want to, build it up as a big deal in advance and whatever. Again, we might get the first vignette or video package tonight. I'm not sure. To me, I don't really have a preference. I would prefer to see her back in WWE because I feel like the Bayley reunion story would make perfect sense. But her going to AEW first also makes sense as well. I mean, she appeared at All In the crowd. There's a lot of fresh matches she can have there. She will be back in WWE at some point. There's no question about that. It's just more a matter of when than if. So I think she'll go to AEW first. Maybe not even necessarily sign. Maybe just appear. Probably sign, let's be honest. If they're going to make a big deal about her appearing, she's probably signing for at least a year or two, maybe 3 years, who knows. Hopefully not 5 years. But she will be back in WWE at some point, so it's hardly an issue. But I do think she goes to AEW. Their second question, is it just me, or are you getting tired of Noam Dar as Heritage Cup champion? It's getting boring, and even though Metaphor is an entertaining faction, them interfering in his matches is giving me Bloodline flashbacks as well. You make it sound like the Bloodline flashbacks is like that happened like 10 years ago, like it's fucking Nam or something. Even though Nam wasn't 10 years ago, but the Bloodline shit's still happening. But I understand your point. Yeah, no, listen, I really don't care for Noam Dar. I think he's a good worker. The Metaphor shit is just fucking stupid. You said they were an entertaining faction. Your words, not mine. I don't think that at all. I don't think they're entertaining. Lash Legend is improved. I like Ora Mensa. The faction is dumb. The Heritage Cup Championship is pointless. It serves no purpose. I don't care about the matches. I really just don't care about the whole thing, so... He's been champion forever. They probably just don't know what to do with him if he wasn't champion is the thing. If he wasn't the Heritage Cup champion, they probably would have no idea what to do with the guy. So that's probably why he's champion. I don't care for the title. I don't care for Noam Dar. I don't care for Metaphor. He's not bad. He's actually a very good worker, but he's just fucking annoying, which I guess is the point because he's a heel, but I don't know. I feel like he's been there for a decade and really hasn't done anything, so I guess there's that as well. I just don't see him above a certain level the same way I do other people in NXT, or that entire group. I guess it gets Jakara Jackson and Lash Legend on TV and something to do, which is nice. But it's an idea. It's not an idea that really entertains me. Their segments are typically not funny at all. But it's an idea, I guess. And their last question, actually, they had 3 questions, not 2. Last question for the show. Your thoughts on Karrion Kross's new faction, and how will Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits counter this new faction, since Scarlett is a part of Final Testament? Is that the new name for the faction? Final Testament? That would be an interesting faction name. He then added, why not add Bianca Belair to Lashley's group, since she has nothing else besides feuding with Damage Control? I like that idea. What I thought you were going to say, which is where I think this is headed, that they're going to add BFAB to the group. Now, BFAB can't really work. I have no desire to see a BFAB Scarlett match. I think did they not already do that at one point a while ago? I don't remember. Maybe it was Zelina. No, it was Meechin. It was Meechin and Scarlett on SmackDown a couple of months ago. I think it was the mixed tag. I don't know if they ever had a singles match, but anyway, I don't really care to see Scarlett and BFAB in the ring together. That sounds terrible. But BFAB did, again, get involved with Lashley and the Profits, not on SmackDown on TV last week, but they again teased it in a backstage interview on .com. Where that's going, I have no idea. They may not even follow up on it. There's a lot of things Triple H books and teases that he doesn't really follow up on, which is an issue. It seems like they kind of get started with something and then completely move on from it. But I wouldn't mind that. Bianca being involved in it instead. It gives BFAB something to do as long as she's not wrestling. Bianca, I would want to see it. One, because it puts her with Montez Ford. In 1A, they have their new Hulu show coming out in a couple of weeks, so it would help promote that. And 2, it gets her the fuck away from Damage Control, like you said. Who would that leave to feud with Damage Control? Well, I mean, if you turn Bayley soon, that kind of solves that problem. Get Bianca away from the fucking Damage Control people. I know she's probably going to interact with them in the Rumble. You can have Bayley throw out Bianca and win the match. I mean, I guess I said earlier, no one from SmackDown's won the Rumble. I guess, Bayley's winning, hopefully, and she's from SmackDown. Rhea won last year and she's from Raw. But the year before that, who won? Bianca won. She was on SmackDown in 2021. And 2022 was Ronda, and she went to SmackDown. So SmackDown's got the Women's Rumble. Raw's got the Men's Rumble. But anyway, I think Bianca with the Profits would be great. It would give her something to do. When the Bayley-Io feud officially kicks off fairly soon, I would have to think, Bianca will have nothing to do, especially since Charlotte's out hurt, and that was the match I thought we would get. Unless they call up Jade and she does something with Jade soon. Jade Cargill, not Cora Jade, that is. I could see her getting involved with Bobby and the Profits. Maybe she replaces B-Fab. Maybe they're both in the group. I don't know. As far as Karrion's new faction, I actually really like it. I don't know how exciting it's going to be in the long term, but it gives Karrion something to do. It brings back AOP with something to do. I like the dynamic there. I think Cross having Disciples makes sense. Having Paul Ellering as part of the faction is fucking sick. They really did not need to do that because they already have Karrion and Scarlett in the group. They didn't really need Paul Ellering there as well. But he hasn't been a part of the AOP act in almost 6 years. So, and he was a big part of that act in NXT, and Paul Ellering is great. So, I think it's cool. I like the faction. I love the vignettes. The matches might be a different story. They always are with Karrion Kross, but so far the presentation is top-notch in my opinion. And that's going to do it, guys, for today's edition of #AskGSM, episode 528, here today for January 10th, 2024. Thank you guys, as always, for sending in your questions. I appreciate it. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. Last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section in this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.